Hey nerds, welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Rundown Recap. I'm your host, Eric Hare, and with me tonight is the dude, El Duderino, the duder, Darren Stemple.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
I love it. I love it. Excited to be back for the
I had
new
a
year.
Joel quote there, but now I got to just quote the dude.
Yeah, but yeah, I got to do the dude, you know. So, welcome back to the recap show. Welcome back, first series that we're going to be doing on the recaps for 2023. One that we have been anticipating for quite a while since we got that first trailer. But we're going to be talking today about this HBO's series, The Last of Us. We'll be offering commentary, thoughts and insights into the episode 1 of the series. And so if you wouldn't mind, hit us up on our social media. We have TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And also, if you would leave a comment on the YouTube video, if that would be possible, or, if you like what you're hearing on the audio side, you can always go into like Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. That helps the channel, helps us grow. But if you would just hit the likes and subscribe buttons everywhere you can, it really helps the channel. So the title for this week's episode is When You're Lost in the Darkness. So I wanted to kind of talk to everybody just very briefly about how we break down as far as like a viewer breakdown. So I am a Last of Us newbie. I have not played the game. But you, Darren, on the other hand, are an old veteran for this. So when did you get involved with The Last of Us?
When the game came out in 2014, Morgan, Brett, they're my big video game guys. So they played it and loved it, and they're like, "Yeah, you got to try this." And I think that was still I wasn't like totally done with zombies at that point, so it was kind of still up my alley at that point. And it's a life-changing game when you play it. It's life-changing because you've just never experienced a video game so cinematically.
Right.
And it was it's an incredible experience. So from the moment it came out, people were saying, "Can't wait for this to be a movie. Can't wait for this to be a movie." And so when it was finally announced as a TV show for HBO Max, that was really good news for us fans because we knew they were going to be able to take their time with the story, which is what it deserves.
Yeah.
And man, we'll get into it, but it's exciting knowing I've seen this in the game and I'm watching it on screen, and it's like one for one, but then also seeing where else they expanded,
right?
Which we'll get into. So
yeah,
that's my perspective. And Morgan will be on these at some point, and he's an even bigger Last of Us fan. Like, I've played Last of Us 3 times total. I haven't played any of the DLCs or the prequel, or I don't know if it's a full prequel, but it's like maybe it is a prequel DLC is what it is. And then there's The Last of Us 2, which
DLC
I haven't played.
Being a downloadable content. So
Additional,
it's an expansion of the original game, and you add new levels to it for those of us who are not gamers. So
yeah, and Morgan's played all that like 700 times.
Right.
Right. So,
in fact, I think that's where he's at tonight. Like, I think he's at home playing The Last of Us because he couldn't be.
He's
here
at
with us this
home
evening.
washing his tights.
Yeah. So, so very interesting that you bring up. Very interesting that you bring up the video game stuff and how it was kind of life changing, if you will. So prior to, I would say, The Last of Us, there had been some cinematic type movies or cinematic type games. I can remember back in the late 90s, I played Wing Commander, and that game had cutscenes with Mark Hamill in it, and several, but they were very short scenes, an intro into this level that you're going to go do or whatever. And it was neat. It was kind of cool. And then I remember Command and Conquer was another game that did that. They had that whole They had a whole cutscene stuff, and that actually did advance the game along. Like you had these scenes that would come up, movie scenes that would pop up, and
Yeah.
and they always had really cool actors. They had like Michael Ironside was on there as one
He
of the
needs to be
guys.
in every video game.
Yeah, oh my gosh, the guy's
all-time
voice,
right
yeah,
there.
guy's voice. And then they have this gal that played the Tanya character. Oh my gosh, she reminded me of a precursor to Lara Croft, because her outfit was almost exactly the same. But anyhow, but these guys took it to a whole new level. I know like BioShock had like some movie cutscenes and stuff like that, but this really took it to a whole different place. And so the video game was created by a guy named Neil Druckmann, who is a writer and showrunner on the series here. And he had said in an interview that I listened to that he had tried to make The Last of Us into a movie multiple times, but he just couldn't seem to make it work. And then I think he watched the Chernobyl series or something else on HBO and was like, okay, this is the format for this. This is where we could tell the story the right way. And ironically, Craig Mazin, who did the Chernobyl series, is a huge fan of The Last of Us. And so he had been trying to get a meeting with Neil, and so they finally, through a mutual friend, figured out that they had been trying to get in touch with each other the whole time. And so once they finally, got with each other, then all the magic happened. And honestly, Druckmann said he was really kind of concerned about, pitching it to HBO, and Craig's like, no, we'll go in and we'll do it. And he said he was sitting in that boardroom with them, and he said it was a little weird for him to have somebody else pitching his idea to HBO, but he said Craig's passion for the project and his understanding of the project, and then the reaction from HBO was like, yep, sounds great. When do we start? And so he just expected it to be more of a fight.
And be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. Well, and I think it sounds to me like HBO is a lot, I guess once they find an idea, they get an idea pitched to them, that they're a lot more accommodating than maybe some of the bigger picture houses are and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so first reaction.
They don't have a lot of misses.
They don't. They really don't. So, a couple of the shows, I think Westworld started out really great. The first 2 seasons of Westworld were really, really terrific. I haven't watched the 4th season yet, but the 3rd season was a little bit of a disappointment. And then there's been a couple other shows, but man, when they hit, it is bonkers good.
Yeah, it's world event style.
Starting with, really starting, if you go back all the way to Rome, the Rome series was really, really great.
Sopranos.
Band of Brothers, The Sopranos.
It started with Sopranos.
The Wire, all that stuff,
Yeah, The Sopranos is the show that's credited for the start of this revolution of TV over the last 20 years.
Yeah. So really, really terrific stuff. So overall, as a fan of the series,
this is their second biggest debut.
That's
in
what
the
I
last
saw.
10 years or so. So
yeah, yep, and that encompasses a little known series called Game of Thrones. So
Game of Thrones wasn't big when it first started, but it became big. Just so,
but it wasn't right out of the chute. I don't think it was that. I don't think it was. I think a lot of people didn't really know what it was.
A lot of people watched or heard about it after the first season was over, and that's when they started watching it.
Yeah.
Season 2 was huge, but
so give me your first reaction as a fan. As a person who's played The Last of Us. Give me your first reaction to the first episode, just overall. What are your thoughts?
That we already have the best video game adaptation. It might be a little hyperbolic, but it honestly feels that way because I've never seen a video game adaptation where it's taking so much from the story, but also adding so much to it that it's amazing. And I think I was talking with Brett King about this earlier, and when you have an adaptation, you can't do one for one. think the only time
Right.
it's ever really been done is Snyder and Watchmen. And that's
Right.
as divisive of a movie as most movies are.
Right.
But when you are adapting something, it's riskier to add something than to take something away. And what I mean by that is in the video game, there's a scene where Tess and Joel have kind of their, on shot first moment where they're talking to Robert's guys, and in the middle of it, one of the guys senses Tess just blows his head off, and it's the level where you fight Robert's guys. They took that away from this episode, and they added so much more. So it's I feel like it's more risky to add than to subtract, because when you add, it could change the whole, the whole show, the whole essence of the show. So, sometimes just taking away is just, it's okay. And I understand why they did this. And this is brilliant. First of all, I really liked the first scene.
Yeah.
That was more for you Last of Us newbies. So you can understand the virus. You can understand kind of how it took over, and it also builds a really great sense of dread. Like that last line when he's like, what happens if that happens?
Right.
Well, we lose. And John Hannah killed that scene, by the way.
Oh, he's
Anyway.
terrific, isn't he?
Oh, man.
Both those guys actually are really, really great. John Hannah.
Did you ever watch Silicon Valley?
I did not, but Christopher Heyerdahl is just so great. He's so great. And then John Hannah he's really just amazing.
Yeah. It makes me almost want to watch The Mummy again.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot he was in The Mummy. Yeah, he's the brother, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the brother. Yep. And so anyway, that first scene, I loved it. Now, Brett King, who's a big time Last of Us fan, even more than me, says he's like, it felt out of place. I'm like, I can see why that would feel out of place for a video gamers, we'll call them.
Right.
And how it would be really helpful for somebody like you. But I also loved it. And then the actual first 30 minutes of, or the 2003 section, can't wait to talk more about this, is a masterclass in building tension.
For sure.
And then the second half of the show is really great world building, really great character introductions, along with establishing characters like Joel. Had to reestablish him into a new world. It established the landscape of the world with the kid walking through Boston. And then you got to see things like Red is Dead and stuff like that. And the second half is a masterclass in, that world building, but also taking away all the violence in the second half of the show until Joel pummels that dude.
Yeah.
And it made it so much more impactful. And for somebody who has had PTSD issues, you could see that Joel was experiencing PTSD in that moment, and how you just black out and have those kind of moments where you just don't stop till something stops you.
Yeah. Well, and we'll
really great job there.
We'll hit back on that element too, because the juxtaposition between your first introduction of Joel's violence and how his daughter Sarah reacts to it versus Ellie's first viewing of Joel's violence and her reaction to it, because it couldn't be more opposite of each other.
Vastly different.
Yeah.
So I loved it.
Good.
But I've been dying, and I have waited so we can talk about it here. I've been dying to know, what was it like to experience The Last of Us for the first time?
Well, first of all, I loved it. I've tried to stay away from the content as much as possible, because I just want to be kind of surprised. So I am a zombie fan, if you will. I do enjoy zombie stuff. I did love the intro. As to kind of get into the recap, the intro of the show is taking place in 1968. and it's a standard talk show, the Dick Cavett style talk show, where he has a couple of epidemiologists on. And so they're discussing viruses, which I think is kind of interesting because, we've just gone through what we've gone through with COVID. And what the guy is saying is very true. It's like, hey, yeah, we do get hit with viruses. Sometimes it's very catastrophic and millions of people die, but most of us make it and we move on, and that's not what keeps this one guy up at night. Like, he doesn't worry about those. He's more concerned about fungal infections and, specifically the one fungus, the one fungus that they have that they're kind of talking about is the one that takes over. He uses an example, the one that takes over ants. But it basically gets in the bloodstream, takes over the brain, and then slowly it builds this thing that comes out of their head, and it can just move around, and then it pops out the spores and just replicates itself to anything, the other ones, and goes after more ants. So very, very, very scary. That's for sure. I think, because we just did go through the pandemic, of a respiratory virus that we have gone through, and to see how a lot of people reacted to that, both with panic or with, trying to be as thoughtful as they possibly can and try and work things out. And it just was really interesting to see how everybody, handled that. And here we are kind of going about, and we can kind of reevaluate how we went through that, and maybe do better next time. But if it's a fungal infection, all the things that we did in this case, it may not even matter. And so,
he says there's no preventatives.
There's no preventatives. There's no cures, no nothing. So, you just gotta,
you're like, oh God.
Yeah. So the seriousness. So, and the other bit that I really enjoyed was that they said it in 1968. So this is way separate. So it's not like this is some sort of surprise that, this type of stuff can happen. They've known about this for decades, and there's still nothing we can do, about that. There's just nothing we can do.
Yeah.
So
even, and then, which is that 35 years later, still nothing for it.
Right. Right. So then we jump forward in time to 2003, Austin, Texas, and we're introduced to Joel and his daughter, Sarah. And so Joel is played by Pedro Pascal, which I think he's cast he's like in every role now. It seems like
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, he's got like
I can't wait for him to be a Jedi.
So yeah, he's really, really, really terrific. So so
he's like my top 2 favorite actor right now. Him and John Krasinski.
Yeah, he's really, really good. And then his daughter is played by Nico Parker. So she was in Dumbo, and she's done a couple other things. It's just a phenomenally talented young actress. So really, really, really good.
So good.
And they tell us that, hey, it's Joel's birthday. It's his 36th birthday, and so you can tell that there's no mom around, but they don't ever mention anything about it. They don't ever talk about it. It's not really, it's just accepted, and just like, hey, she's not, there's nobody here. So it's just the two of them. And you can really see, they do a really terrific job of that banter that only family can have, that a daughter and a dad can have with each other, especially when they depend on each other as much as they do. And you can clearly see that Joel,
you're almost in diapers.
Yeah.
How do you know I don't know her anywhere?
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Wait to talk to my daughters like that.
Right. It's really, really terrific, and they do a really good job of making that connection. You can see how much he loves her. And they do a pretty good job of kind of, I guess, head faking you a little bit, because it looks like maybe she's stealing from him in one scene. She goes through his drawer and she grabs his watch and she grabs some money. But then again, they did say that it's his birthday. So, if you really kind of think about it, you're like, maybe she's doing something different, but But and it turns out she is. So she ends up taking his watch and all that good stuff. We also get introduced to Joel's brother Tommy, who's played by Gabriel Luna. For those of you who've watched the latest Terminator movie,
Agents of Shield.
Well, he was in Agents of Shield, but
that too.
But he was also in the latest Terminator movie.
Is he the other Terminator?
He is the other Terminator. Yep. So, and actually, he's pretty terrifying in that role.
It's pretty terrifying as Ghost Rider and Agents of Shield.
Yeah. So pretty intense actor. Definitely really, really a terrific guy. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. We did get to see him in the very beginning, but as you said, we kind of get these little hints that things are not right. There's something, there's a little thing in the radio about Jakarta in Indonesia. And then there's some things going on in one section. She's in class and this other kid in the class has like all of a sudden there's like a light that reflects in her eyes and it's just like a twitch or whatever. But they don't ever
even hear a cough
too.
Like just a little cough is like, ooh.
Right. And because you know that this is going like
us and COVID, really,
right?
But
yeah, but everybody's oblivious to all of this, and really,
right.
Sarah,
right?
Sarah is a great vehicle for us because we're all oblivious to this. Like we have no idea what's really happening, and nobody really does. Sarah has a pretty good relationship with the next door neighbor, and so they have I think their mom lives with them, and she's got Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. It looks like, Alzheimer's, I think is what she's got. But she's unable to feed herself. She's unable to care for herself. But at one point during that opening sequence, Sarah's looking for a movie on the wall, which is an Easter egg also from the game. There is a movie that she finds on the wall that is a pretty popular element to, I think, a nice nod to the gamers that they kind of put that in there. But anyhow, I think you can see in the background, she starts moving and making all kinds of,
and it's terrifying.
Yeah. And it really is because it's terrifying. You're like yelling. I don't yell at the screen very often, but I'm like, just turn around, She does it. You're like,
right.
And one of the scenes that we saw, we talked about,
and she's not getting chocolate chip cookies,
right? Well, I was going to say, okay, so we had this discussion before the show actually started, and it was one of the funny bits about it is, I'll tell you how good of an actress, Nico Parker really is, because in one moment, like in one facial expression, you can see utter disappointment, when she's talking to
like gross disappointment,
right? Yeah. But trying to hide it, but not really, and because the neighbor's like, you want to bake some cookies? And she goes, yeah, chocolate chip. And the lady's like, nah, oatmeal raisin, and you just look at her, you're like, like that was just beautiful. It was just absolutely beautifully done. So Joel says, hey, I'm going to work a double. I won't be home till late. She says, will you be home by 10? And he says, yeah, and so, but he doesn't get home by 10. It's much later that he gets home. Him and Tommy finally get home. She hands him.
Let's stop it right there, because I want to talk about that whole section that you just described.
Sure.
Okay. That part's not in the game.
Okay.
The game starts when Joel gets home. Well, actually, you wake up as Sarah, you walk around the house a little bit, and then Joel gets home. That's basically the start of the game.
Yeah.
So, again, kind of giving you the different viewpoints here. As a fan of the game, watching this, it was like, this is going to be way more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because we're spending more time with Sarah. We're seeing more of a personality from Sarah. We're connecting with Sarah. And it was like, that's why when I said it was like it was a masterclass in building tension, because we knew what was coming.
Right.
And how it goes down varies very similar. So this whole section of, and it was also built, again, world building a little bit, the Jakarta thing, that stuff it wasn't just to show that she's smart and we should feel more sad because she's smart. But that whole part, watching it as a fan of the game, it was like, whoa, this is making my palms sweat.
Yeah.
And so at that point, since you had no idea what about the game,
Yeah.
did you feel something was coming for Sarah, or what did you like? How did you feel watching that?
Well, yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea anything was coming. It just was a nice. I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, we're setting up the characters for whatever's coming next, and really to kind of give you an idea of what Joel's personality is, what Sarah's personality is, what Tommy's personality is, and then to kind of make the threat real by making the next door neighbor, who I thought was brilliant, that they took the most innocent person in that home and turned her into
and incapable,
completely incapable. And that just goes to show you what this fungus can do to a person. Yeah. And so it was really, really brilliant for them to change, that character into what they changed her into. Because
and that scene was horrifying.
It was terrifying. It was
seeing, and they've changed it from the game where it spreads through spores.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have the actors have gas masks on throughout the series or halfway. So they changed it to having more of this like fungal attachment. And when Nana pulls her head up, and
you can see the tentacles. Yeah.
To tentacles. At first I was like, oh, that's a hairball. I'm like, oh nope, that's fungi.
Right.
Oh my God, that is. And then the scream.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. And we'll talk a little bit later. There was I meant to grab a screen grab of it. And one of the podcasts I listened to, The Last of Us, on the episode, was if you've paid really close attention to episode 1, there's a lot of little Easter eggs in there that will come back later on in the series. So if you haven't watched it, make sure you do watch very, very, very carefully for a lot of different stuff, because there's a lot of different things that are going to come up. One of them I think is going to be in one of the scenes where they later on they see a picture on a wall that kind of describes the different locations that you get bit on and how long it takes for you to get infected and to have symptoms and all that good stuff. So So Joel does get home. He's disappointing to his daughter because he's late.
I'll preface this part real quick. I'll preface this part from that point on to the jump forward in time.
Yeah,
is so accurate of how they lifted it from the game.
Yeah,
it's incredible. The lines. Where'd you get the money? Oh, I sell hardcore drugs.
Right.
Then the truck scene, the viewpoint is just like the game, and it feels like the game. The burning house, the family on the side of the road, the backed up traffic, and then they get to the city center, and it changes from a car accident that causes them to be turned upside down to we're on HBO and we have a much bigger budget airplane crash.
Right.
Oh my God, that was about the only change from the game to the show, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it was a much better change. I was like, again, my palms are sweaty.
Yeah. So
weak arms are.
They have this tender moment between the two of them, where they kind of fall asleep. She's a little disappointed in him because he doesn't bring a cake home, birthday cake. He promised her he'd bring a birthday cake for himself home, but she had grabbed, and I can't.
Pancakes are for her anyway.
Yeah, I was trying to find the name of I forgot to write it down, but the name. Curtis and Viper. Curtis and Viper 2. She shows them the Curtis and Viper 2. DVD, and he's like, "Oh, this is great," So the
It's
two
got
of
the
them,
deleted scenes.
so the two of them sit down to watch this movie, and it's just a nice moment, especially if you have kids or especially if you have daughters. There's just nothing better than sitting down with your kid and watching a movie together, and so it's a very tender and beautiful moment between the two of them. And that's the last time that'll happen for them. So phone call, Tommy's been arrested, he got into a fight, defended somebody, he's in jail, so he needs to go bail him out. And so he tells Sarah,
and if you caught it, he was defending somebody who
was acting crazy.
Or
and he was defending against
someone from acting crazy.
Right. So so they that's when we get to see Sarah interact with the neighbor's dog. Comes over and scratches at the door. She goes outside.
Jump scare.
Exactly. She sees that the next door neighbor's door is open, so she goes to check and make sure that they're okay. And that's when we see that the Alzheimer's grandma Nana she's now something else. She's literally bitten the guy who's at the house, who he was the booster from I don't know if you caught that, but he's the booster from Friday Night Lights. So
she'll take what you got. I just that when he said that, I was like, who's that guy? And it took me a little bit before I was like, that was the guy from Friday Night Lights.
And again,
buddy,
so we get a really cool scene where it now becomes real. Like she is terrifying, and so she's bit one person, he's bleeding all over the place, and now she's feeding. It looks like she's kind of feeding on somebody else, and so Sarah gets out of there. That's when Joel and Tommy show up, and this is when we get our first experience of what Joel is capable of, as far as violence and stuff is concerned, because she comes running out. The old lady Nana comes running out, and Joel smacks her with a pipe wrench and kills her. And Sarah's immediate reaction, this is somebody that she knows and she cares about. She starts crying like instantly. She's like, you killed her, and he's like, she, well, I didn't really have anything. I couldn't do anything else, like that's just how it was going to be, and so, but it doesn't seem to faze him. He just keeps moving on because he's now moved into a different mode of living, which is just survival mode and protecting her and, protecting Tommy. And so the three of them get in the truck, and like you said, apparently this is exactly how the video game goes. They get in the truck and they start going, and it was pretty crazy. There was a lot of stuff going on. They're driving around, and so you get to the point where the plane crashes behind them. The truck gets wrecked. We wake up. We black out for a moment. It's really Sarah kind of blacks out for a moment, and then she wakes up, and all hell is broken loose on the street. Like it was already bad, but now it's really bad. You could see there's people again feeding on other people, running around. They get separated. So Joel and Sarah get separated from Tommy because of another car accident. A police vehicle rams into it, and they get separated from each other. And so Sarah and Joel are trying to get out into this field, and they get stopped by a soldier who is wearing a gas mask and a rifle. And you can hear one side of a radio conversation between this soldier and his superior officer. And Joel is trying to tell him, look, we're not infected. We're not sick. We're not sick. And he's holding Sarah because she's been injured in this car accident and her ankle's twisted. She can't run. So he's holding Sarah, and you can see the panic in Joel's face. It's amazing because it's just a very quick, it happens super, super fast. You can see the panic in his face, and that he knows what this guy's going to do, and sure enough, he makes a break for it, and the soldier shoots, and they fall down this, Sarah and Joel fall down this hill, and they, Joel gets up, Sarah's laying on the ground still. Joel gets up and turns around, and the soldier's standing at the top of the hill. And he is getting ready to shoot again. And Tommy comes in and saves the day and kills the soldier. But then they turn around, and Sarah's got a wound, a gunshot wound, and she's bleeding out. And so you get to watch this, it was really painful. Like, that was a really, one of the rules in TV is you never kill kids and you never kill dogs, and so they broke that rule right off the bat, by killing Sarah. And so she dies, in his arms. And that was pretty powerful. So, like, as far as like how that goes in the game, taking your time, I don't know, because I obviously haven't played the game, but taking your time from a show perspective and letting you really get connected with, I didn't even talk about the watch situation, because she actually did go to the watch shop and give him a broken watch that he had and get it fixed, which is actually pretty important because he is always wearing that watch from that point on. But from the show perspective versus the game perspective, was it more impactful for you emotionally when she gets shot and dies, because you've had that much more time to get to know her, or was it pretty just shocking either way?
I think it was just like one of those, in the game, you're in control of these characters, and it, like when you're beating somebody to a bloody pulp with Joel, you're just mashing a button, and you're like,
right,
you're not as emotionally connected as when you're not controlling these characters and you're letting it play out and watching it happen. And so I think it made it more emotional. Plus, like I said, that setup that wasn't in the game gave us a real, like, hardcore connection to Sarah.
Yeah.
That we didn't have before.
And to Joel.
And to Joel. And to Tommy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
It was tough. I was emotional. And I know a lot of other people were emotional. So.
Yeah. Well, then we cut to fade to black, cut to 20 years down the road, and it's Boston.
Did you expect that?
I did not expect a 20-year time jump.
Was that jarring?
No, I don't think so. Just because I don't know any better, on that one. The 20-year time jump and stuff like that is like, well, all right. I like it because it skips over the Walking Dead years, if you will. Because the Walking Dead years, were really just the survival years, and there's no civilization. It's just every man for himself trying to just do what he can and band together and stuff like that. But after 20 years, people would have become, they would have had some sort of civilization and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we see at this point. They would have had some process for, dealing with the infected and all that good stuff. And that's kind of what we see here. So, but yeah, 20 years pass, and we've now changed venues to Boston, Massachusetts. There's a child that stumbles out of the woods, little boy, and he goes up to the quarantine zone, and the soldiers come out and let him in. And you can see, and this is one of the sequences where I think there's a lot going on that will be helpful to you later on as the show goes on. So with this child, we introduce the scanner to find out whether or not you're infected or not. We also get, like I said, on the wall in one of the sequences, if you look on the wall, there's a chart of how long it takes for you to exhibit symptoms of the infection, depending on where on the body you were bitten. So if you're bitten on the legs, it takes a lot longer. If you're bitten on the arms, it takes, a little bit less time. And then if you're bitten on the neck or the shoulder area, it's it's pretty much lights out for you in about 15 minutes. So it's a very, very fast infection if you get bit in those areas. It's very slow. It's much slower if you get bitten in other extremities on the body. So so the child,
it does seem like if you amputate like your arm, you might be okay. There was a bunch of amputees in the camp. I've heard that in the prequel that there's a guy who tries to amputate himself, but he bleeds out anyway, so he couldn't really tell if that worked. So
sure.
I wonder if that's something that will come into play.
That's something that they did in Zombie. What was the movie? The Zombie. They did it in The Walking Dead, and then they also did it in what's the World War Z, where they cut off an arm to stop the infection. So yeah, so it's not unusual for zombie type stuff to maybe have that. So the kid, the interesting part about the child is it really just kind of goes to show you the seriousness of this is a no nonsense deal. So this group is called Fedra at this point, and it's the quarantine zone, Fedra quarantine zone. So this woman is very, very sweet to this little boy, and she's like, if you want, we can, if you take your medicine here, we'll take you in the back, and you can play with as many toys as you want, and we'll get your favorite meal and all that other stuff, and then they kind of cut to black, and then you kind of get an overview of like what the quarantine zone looks like. There's a bunch of stuff going on, and including these people are taking bodies out of trucks and burning them. So clearly, the infected and stuff like that, they're burning the infected bodies. And here it is, it's 20 years later, and we're still dealing with this stuff, at least at a level where we're having to burn bodies every day, so that gives you,
they don't have a cure for it at this point, but they
right.
have things under control-ish,
right?
Like, in a way, which it's weird to say, but
yeah. But I imagine these are people who have come outside the quarantine zone that have made their way there, and it turns out they're infected.
In the game, it's the change from the game is, in the game, Joel's walking down the street and a guy tests positive, and they shoot him right there.
Oh yeah,
on the street, in the quarantine zone. So this is a little bit different.
Yeah, and so this woman is unloading.
More impactful when it's a kid.
Yeah. This woman's unloading bodies from a truck. She goes over the other truck that just pulls up. She opens it and she looks inside, and she's like, "I can't do this," And so she turns to this other guy, and that's when we're introduced to, 56-year-old
reintroduced.
Yeah, reintroduced to 56-year-old Joel. Because the last time we saw him, he had his little girl in his arms, and then the very next time that we see them, he's picking another child's body up, and it almost doesn't even affect him at all, and it's the little boy that we just saw. And
he's lost his humanity.
Yeah, he really has.
Just a quick scene like that
shows
Joel's lost his humanity.
He's a different guy than what we saw 20 years ago. So so it's pretty intense. So the Fedra QZ, how did that line up with the gameplay and stuff like that? I know you said that they shot that, but as far as like the look and the feel of it, did it mirror that pretty well?
Yeah, it did it very well. To also, because again, bigger budget, HBO, bigger budget, they can do a lot more. So the public executions, I guess that's kind of in line with the guy getting shot.
Yeah.
But those executions are about like, oh, you violated quarantine hours or something.
Right.
You're getting executed for that, not for testing positive. So
right.
that was crazy. And what I liked is it almost felt like Truman Show size quarantine zone with, you see, Tess. She's been jumped by Robert's guys, and they're over on the other side of the city. He gets bombed. She has to go to jail. She goes back then to where Joel's place is. So in a short amount of time, she's traveled across this quarantine zone quite a bit, and it feels massive. And I like that because it gives a better sense of why they're able to have like a quasi government there,
Yeah, so we do get introduced to a new character. Her name is Tess, and she is in the clutches of a guy named Robert, who clearly is a smuggler of some sort, or a guy who can get things, I guess is how we would look at him. But and she is played by, and I was like, gosh, where do I know her from?
Right.
Initially, I was like, she looks so familiar to me. But Anna Torv, who anybody who's watched Fringe, she was on that Fringe show. Terrific. I think she's Australian actress, but just so good. And she's,
the Leftovers too.
Okay, yeah, I watched that one, but she does a terrific job, and she's just like, it's funny because Robert is supposed to be, Robert's got these two thugs. They've clearly tuned her up a little bit because she's got, black eye and some scrapes and stuff like that. And even though she's the one that's tied up, she's almost in charge of that room. Like, she's like,
totally.
Let's just take a deep breath here, and because
forget about this.
Because Robert is clearly afraid of her, whoever her beau
partner
is, whoever her partner is, which we come to find out is going to be Joel, but he's clearly afraid of him, and she's like, look, just tell your guys they apologize, and we'll all move on. You scammed us, you took our money, you tried to sell the battery to somebody else, because they're looking for a truck battery. They're trying to find a battery for a truck, but we don't really say why or anything. So again, like Darren said, a bomb goes off and she ends up escaping out of there, but she does get arrested because there's some sort of insurrection, or what's the better word on insurrection, but
it was just kind of rebels,
fighting against it would
freedom
appear
fighters.
Fedra.
Yeah, freedom fighters,
right?
What they call themselves.
Yep. So opposition group, maybe pretty good. So then we cut to a young girl chained up in a room, and so this is our first introduction to Ellie, although we're not
our other main character.
Yes, we're not introduced to Ellie. We're introduced to a girl named Veronica, who's chained up against the wall. She's being interrogated. She tells she's asked to count to 10. She's asked what her name is. And then there's a back and forth where she's clearly got an attitude, and she's not happy about being chained to this, to this wall. So we kind of get a little bit of back and forth there. And then we cut away to Joel. Joel's murking his way through the stuff that's going on in the QZ. He has a run-in with a police officer or Fedra officer, in which he's trying to get some information on some stuff, and he sells him some pills to get some money. Joel also volunteers to do some whatever dirty job, whatever one pays the most, because he's desperate to get some money for something. So and so then he goes into a radio.
I think it's a multifaceted decision for Joel. One, it pays the most.
Yeah.
Two, going down in the sewers, he's a smuggler, so he learns the back alleyways, so to speak, with that. Because it pays the most, it's rations. It's not necessarily like he's handing out $20 bills here.
Right.
Rations, and so he can trade
dollar
his
bills,
rations.
Yeah. For goods,
for information, for goods, stuff
whatever.
Like that. So like he uses the cigarettes to just go to the front of the line at the radio guy.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So it doesn't. He's very smart.
Yep. And so the radio guy, and then we kind of find out that Tommy's still alive. And Tommy is in Wyoming.
The radio guy voiced Tommy in the game.
Oh, interesting. That's
very
funny.
Cool. Like how he's kind of,
which is not the only person to come out of the game and into the series. So yeah.
No, a lot of the game characters will.
Yeah.
The only one that plays the same character though is.
Yes. Okay. Who we do get introduced to here very, very shortly.
Yeah.
So Joel then it becomes clearly Tess and Joel now get back together. They sync up with each other. She she calms him down. There's a really interesting scene between Tess and Joel where she she tells him what happened, and then she immediately calms him down. She's like, "Hey, listen, take a breath. You need to calm down on this." Um, and then she then immediately backtracks on that and basically tells Joel, "We're going to go after this guy and we're going to nail his ass." Like,
Let's go hunt him down.
Right. But she wants him calm first before she turns the dog loose, if you will, because she needs him under control, and he's not gonna be under control if he just goes at it. So like that. So,
these are not the droids you're looking for.
Right. Exactly. So, and then they also kind of come to find out that what they're looking for is a battery so that they can put it into a truck so that they can get out to Wyoming to get to his brother, because he's worried he hasn't heard from his brother in like 3 weeks. That's the longest hasn't been able to talk to him. So, then which
is a change from the game.
Yeah.
They're clearly setting up a stronger connection between Tommy and Joel in the show than it was in the game.
Yeah. So
as they should, when you have Papa Pedro and Gabriel Luna, they let them play off each other a lot. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So we while this is happening, we go to a cutscene of a new character that we're introduced to, who's the leader of this group called the Fireflies. And so we kind of find out that where this girl Veronica is locked up is the headquarters basically of this this resistance group called the Fireflies, and they're the ones who are trying to reinstall democracy, if you will, into the country. And we're introduced to the leader of the Boston Resistance. Her name is Marlene, and she's played by Merle Dandridge, who also voiced that very character and in the game, which I thought was very cool. I was like, man, that's terrific. But
the only one who's playing the same character.
Yeah. And one of the things, I was watching an interview with her, and she said, if they had done, if they had done that, they make the character, they make you look like the character in the video game. And so that, have the voice, but had they done the show at the same time, she probably would have been too young to play that character. And so now here we are years later, they're watching, she said, I've aged into the character so I can actually play that character on screen. And she did great. She was really, really terrific. So, so she goes in and basically starts talking to the chained up girl, and it turns out that she knows that her name is Ellie, and she tells Ellie that, hey, I'm the one that, you were in a Fedra school, you were in a Fedra school for soldiers, and that type of stuff. And I'm the one that put you there, basically. So she knows a lot about Ellie that even Ellie, I don't think, knows about her. So she does end up telling her something, and she says, hey, I'm going to give you a piece of information, and if you tell anybody, you'll probably get killed for it. And then we cut away to again, Joel and Tess as they're making their way to where they're going to go after Robert. As it is, they go through a couple of different places, and we get our first look. And this is different. Is this different from the game, where we get our first look at what the fungus does to people after a while, because we see this guy.
It's not a change from the game. It actually is in the game quite a bit, but what that scene serves is it shows that the fungus grew onto the wall and attached him to the wall, and then that's what that is showing. It's just like, again, this is a thing that will spread in any way possible. And that scene was gross.
It's pretty disgusting. It's pretty disgusting. And I think it's just a foreshadowing of what's to come. I think we'll find out a lot more about the fungus and about the virus as we kind of go through. And we'll see the different stages of of
I
those
do feel
types
like
of
we should have
things.
stated this at the beginning. We are not going to be, or obviously me and Morgan when we're on, we will not be giving spoilers for future episodes or
Yep.
story beats. We're going to always keep it to this
This
episode.
specific episode. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So Ellie, Joel and Tess, they go into this room and come to find out there's Robert. He's all shot up. It's clear there's been some sort of gunfight, and sounds like Robert tried to do what he did to Tess with somebody else, and it didn't quite go the way he wanted it to go.
And it was bad all along.
Yep. And so this gives us an opportunity to introduce Ellie, Joel, and Tess to one another. And the introduction of Ellie and Joel
Brutal.
is pretty rough. Like she
Yeah.
tries to come after him, and he basically steps, like he's got her knife, and he steps on her knife, and he just kind of throws her around a little bit until she understands that he's not messing around, and so Marlene basically says, look, I know you're looking for, you're looking for a battery. I can give you a whole damn truck, but you got to take her with you out west, and I need you to take her all the way, I need you to take her all the way out west, and until we can meet up with you, and take her on her own. But you need to smuggle her out. You need to get her out like now. And Joel's like, I'm not doing that, like they're not wanting to do that. And then they're like, look, you need to do this, and we'll take care of all the stuff that you're looking for. Like I said, the car battery and getting a whole vehicle and all that other stuff. So she buys him off with that. But you can clearly see that Ellie and Joel are not synced up with one another, at least at this point. So there's a lot of tension between the two of them. Tess kind of, I wouldn't say falls away, but she's got other stuff to worry about, I think, as it is. But
Just got to go help work out the plan.
Yeah. So Ellie and Joel, then she kind of, and is this from the game where she has the codes, the music code stuff, and she gives him crap about that?
I don't remember the music code being a part of it.
Yeah.
I do like that. But the part where he's like, I'm going to take a nap. And she's like, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, I guess you'll have to figure that out. That ripped right from the game.
Yeah.
And then they do have a conversation when he wakes up from the nap, which I don't quite remember what it is. You just don't remember the music being a thing.
Well, she's pretty proud of herself because she's broken the code, because she says, oh, while you were gone, a song came on the radio. And he goes, what was the song? And she says some song from the 80s or something like that. And he goes,
wake me up before you go.
Yeah, right. And he's like, oh. And she goes, is that trouble? And he goes, and you could see he's like, clearly.
Yeah, he goes, ah, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And she goes, oh, so 80s means
80s
trouble.
is trouble. Yeah, exactly. And then she's basically like, there was no song on the radio. I just wanted to crack the code, and I did.
Right.
So you can see
at that point in that world, they don't have radios, this is like by request, I guess,
right?
Because it's on the airwaves. But she wouldn't know "Wake Me Up Before You Go."
Right.
So that was really good. That was really good.
Yeah. So it was pretty clever that they did it, and the way they did it, and you could see that she's already trying to manipulate Joel. She's trying to prove that she's smarter than him, and all that. Yeah. So I imagine that will probably come in as things kind of go forward. But she's also she kind of makes the expression that she's excited to leave the QZ because she's never been outside the quarantine zone. She spent her entire life inside there, and so she's excited to kind of see what's on the outside world. And so her and Tess and Joel, they make their way out. They run into the soldier that Joel had sold the pills to earlier. And there's a conflict that occurs. And Ellie stabs the guy with her knife. And
before he could reveal what the status of his machine.
Right. Because Tess and Joel have both taken the test, and then Ellie takes green, and that's when and they both are green, and they both, and so she stabs the guy in the leg, and that's when you have that PTSD moment where he has this flashback. Joel has this flashback of the soldier shooting his daughter, and he's in proximity to this girl that he doesn't even really know all that well, but I have to think that his paternal instinct just takes over, and he just attacks this guy. And this is a guy that I wouldn't say he has a friendship with, but he has a relationship with this guy. Like, they've talked to each other before, and I wouldn't say that I definitely wouldn't say it's friendly, but this is a guy that he knows and he does business with on a regular basis. And he beats this guy to death with his fists. And what's interesting about this scene to me is there's a couple of things that are interesting to me. As he's beating this guy to death, again, if we go back to that scene with Sarah when Joel hits the old woman with the pipe wrench, her reaction is emotional. Like, she's crying. Like, this is really tough for her to see her dad kill somebody. Ellie, on the other hand, you look at her face and she's like leaning into what he's doing. She's like pumped up about it. Like, this is
finally has someone protecting her.
Well, yeah, but she's I wouldn't say turned on by the violence, because she's a little girl, but she's not taken back by the violence. She's into it. And
I think he said in the inside the episode, the Craig Mazin guy said she's activated.
Yeah, and you can see
that was interesting word.
It's an interesting description. And then of course, we find out that Ellie is infected. That she came up positive for the infection. But she says, I was infected weeks ago, and and then we kind of fade into the episode ends, and that's kind of where we are. But you kind of go back to Joel's radio back in his apartment, and the 80s song,
Depeche Mode.
The 80s song comes on the radio, and so we know kind of trouble's kind of coming. So
love me some Depeche Mode.
Yeah. So all in all, man, phenomenal first episode.
That final scene, though, holy crap!
Yeah,
with the building that was tipped over.
Oh yeah,
in the rain.
Yep.
And then, did you hear it?
I did, yes, but I don't know what that means. So it sounded like a predator.
Oh man!
Other than the trailers, it seems like that seems to be the noise that.
You remember when I was watching the Gorn episode and I was like,
yeah,
it sounds like they sound like clickers, and you're like, no, it's more like alien and predator.
The like, predator.
Okay. But yeah, also you'll hear it.
Yep.
Ugh, it's the scariest sound. It's the sound of the clickers. Ugh.
Pretty wild.
Haven't seen those yet.
So yeah, so a little bit of an extra long episode in this one in an hour and 20 minutes. But a lot to
Not
cover.
our episode, though.
A lot to cover. Really, really terrific way to introduce us into these characters. I look forward to seeing more of Bella Ramsey. She was really terrific in what we saw of her as Ellie. And again,
she got a lot of flack. She got a lot of flack for being the person chosen. A lot of people were not happy with that casting, and I think a lot of people are eating some crow.
Yeah, well, as a person who's never watched or never played the game, I don't know any different. I thought she's pretty terrific. So
yeah, and I thought she was terrific. I mean, there was times where I was like, did they just use Ashley Johnson's voice there? Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So she embodies her.
Everybody's going to nitpick stuff. If there's a fundamental character flaw there, then I could see you being complaining about it. But if it's if it's an aesthetic deal where it's she doesn't look exactly like her, it's like, you know what, or if she's not able to portray the characters,
I always say you need to have the essence.
Yeah. As long as you have the essence of the character, then you should be fine. So, anyhow, great.
You're excited.
I am very excited. In fact, I text my brother the next day. I was like, dude, you need to watch this show. Like,
Mhm.
I know the wife probably is not going to be down with it, but you need to watch this show. And
Did Stacy watch it?
she has not. I was going to
Oh,
try and
okay.
get her to watch it with me the other night.
There's still time.
Yeah. So, but
Still
yeah,
time.
it's just the first episode. So,
Banana enjoyed the first episode very much.
yeah. So
When it was
and
over,
Stacey-
she goes, "What the Darren? Like, what did you just get me into?"
well,
her
and
her
Stacey's
like
always
greatest fear is being chased. So there's a lot of chasing going.
Stacy's a big fan of The Walking Dead. She's watched all The Walking Dead with me, so I know that
God
stuff
bless her.
doesn't really. Yeah, she's a glutton for punishment like I am. Although neither one of us are into it at this point. We're just like but
Yeah.
But anyhow, thanks for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you guys who listened to the show. Comment on anything that we missed. If we missed anything on the recap or anything that you found interesting, or expand on anything that we're kind of covered in the show. What was your favorite? What was your favorite part of the episode? If you are a fan, what are you looking forward to? What are you looking forward to on this? If there was stuff that they missed or stuff that they kind of glossed over that you're a little miffed about, leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Yeah,
for sure.
Look forward to it.
Yep, for sure. So, well, Darren, with that being said, we will we'll see you guys next week on the Nerd Rundown Recaps. See ya. Bye.
I love biscuits, but I'm on Atkins.